We want to welcome everyone to the ELK webinar today of M1 rule writing. We're glad that you've chosen to spend some time with us this afternoon. I think you're going to get a lot out of this webinar. Just real quickly, I wanted to let you know that our next webinar coming up is August 12th, and it's actually an M1 Basics webinar. So if you have other people that you know that may be interested in that, they can sign up on our website. And we'll also be having more advanced webinars after August 12th. We don't have the schedule finalized. We're working on it now. There's some great topics coming up, and those will be listed on our website as well, and you can register for those webinars in the future. We are having our webinar today with Brad Weeks, and Brad's been in our tech support department for many, many years, and probably lots of you guys have talked to him before. He's very experienced and very knowledgeable, and I'm sure is going to share a lot of his knowledge with you today. We ask a lot of you to send in requests, specifics on rule writing, and Brad has done his best to incorporate lots of those questions in the presentation. However, obviously we could not cover everyone's question. So if at the end of the webinar you still have a specific question that did not get answered, please feel free to email us and we'll get back to you within the next week. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Brad.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Brad Weeks, and I want to thank everyone for taking time to attend today's webinar on rule writing. I want to thank everyone for submitting your request. We had some very good ones, and we'll try to cover as many of those as possible, and as well as some others. In case you weren't aware, on our website we do have an M1's application page that does have about 30 examples there of things you can take a look at online. So today we're going to start with rule writing, and rules is one of the features of the M1 which sets it apart from many of the other systems on the market. With the flexibility and versatility of the rules, in some cases there may be different means to the same results, meaning my set of rules may be totally different from your set of rules, but in the end we get the same result. So today we're going to show a few examples, and what we're going to be looking at today is an actual RP account that I've set up. And in the RP rule engine, we have the ability to create 528 rules. And by definition, a rule is one whenever and one then statement. If you add additional then or and or fors to your rules, this will take up one additional rule. It is possible to have multiple and statements and then statements within a single rule. You can only have one whenever, and that's your trigger event. Now, keep in mind that if you do use and statements in your rule, these are conditioning statements, and they must be true before the then statement will activate. So if you have multiple ands, all of them must meet a true condition before the event will fire. So first what we'd like to do is go over in RP under Automation, and we're going to go down to Rules. We'd like to first go over some of the basic concepts of rule writing. We have our new rule box. We have our whenever statement. That's our trigger event. Now when you click on the whenever, you have a multitude of selections here. The first is time occurrence, and this is based upon the time of day at sunrise or sunset, which is dependent on your sunrise and sunset settings, which are located here. And if we give you the option to select a city in your area or manually enter the latitude and longitude so that you can calculate sunrise and sunset settings based upon your time region. And we can activate rules whenever sunset occurs or whenever sunrise occurs. We can have rules activate when the hour equals, like whenever every 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. and so forth. Whenever the minutes equal, you may want something to activate every 15 minutes, or whenever every hour and 30 minutes, or have something activate every second. And under the seconds, we are you can actually have this go up to 65,535. Other whenever events, zone input change, and those are your hardwired zones or your wireless zones, and you can select all 208 zones based upon that zone going not secure or violated or becoming secure, or whenever it becomes bypassed or unbypassed. You can have a whenever statement based upon an output, which is a relay, and that can be a physical relay connected to the M1 using our input expander, or it can be what we call phantom outputs, which the output still exists in programming, but it's not physically connected. We'll talk a little more about phantom outputs a little later on. You can have an input based upon a keypad F key, which is a function key. We do integrate with two manufacturers of wireless key fobs. That's the GE Crystal key fob and the Honeywell 4-button and 6-button key fobs. So we can have an event take place when one of those buttons is pressed. M1 does integrate with a number of lighting controls, and you can base a rule when a light changes state, and that can be either through the M1 or from an external change of the light. Automation task. An automation task is basically a macro, and under automation and task, you can assign a name to a task, 32 individual tasks. Now under this screen here, you're just assigning a name to it, and the show box allows it to show on the keypad or through the graphical user interfaces. Once you assign a name, then you have to create rules based upon that task being activated. You can have rules based upon the security system being armed, disarmed, its burglar status, whether it's ready or not ready, the entry-exit delays running or expired, whether the alarm is turned on or cut off, access control, the M1 has some limited access control capabilities, whether or not the chime is enabled or disabled, and when zones become bypassed or unbypassed. Miscellaneous systems, like trouble conditions, AC fail, low battery, things of that nature. Restorals, when those events correct themselves. Other are things like the built-in audio amplifier turning on, or one of these options here. The M1 has the capability of sending and receiving ASCII strings, and when a string is received, you can have a rule take place. This is handy when there is a third-party piece of equipment that we currently don't integrate with. If they have the capability of sending ASCII strings and you have their ASCII string table, you can recreate those ASCII strings in the RP software under text, and then when that text string is received, have a rule activate. Counters. The M1 has a number of counters, and counters can simply be incremented or decremented or added to. A lot of times we use them as flags or placeholders, and we have a few rules that we're going to go over today to help you better understand counters. And then lastly, in our whenever event, we have thermostat change. M1 integrates with a number of thermostats, and we can have rules based upon the thermostat itself getting adjusted and broadcasting that information back to the M1, and when that rule activates, or when that event activates on the thermostat, we can have a rule. So those are our whenever statements, and those are the trigger events. That's the event that has to take place before the rest of the rule is going to activate. Like I said, we can have conditioning and statements, and those can be based upon the time or the date, or whether it's light or dark outside based upon your sunrise, sunset settings, an input state, an output state, who was the last user to enter a code on the keypad, a lighting change, whether or not the system is armed, disarmed, or in alarm, one of those miscellaneous systems, troubles or restorals or other, based upon a counter, a temperature value from one of our zone temperature sensors, or a thermostat. And then the result, once the conditions are met, is the then, and that's what you want to happen once an event has taken place. You may want to have that automation task activate. You may want to control the security system in some way, arming or disarming, turn on or off outputs, control lighting, have the M1 Gold speak a message, send out a custom text message to like a third-party piece of equipment. You can have custom text messages to the keypad. You can enable or disable the chime, beep the keypads, chirp the outside siren. We can set those counters we were discussing. You can have the M1 Gold dial a telephone number and speak a predefined message. With the addition of the XEP module, you can have it send up to 16 predefined email messages, control the thermostats. It is possible to enable or disable users, and enable or disable the voice, bypass or unbypass zones, reset smoke power, and control use the generic audio commands to control the Rust Sound Proficient or Nuvo system. This is a basic quick overview of the whenevers. Now, in our first example today, what I would like to do is talk to you about a feature we get requests for quite often, is the ability to have a single event, let's say for instance an F key on a keypad, be able to toggle or turn on or off an event. Now, first thing we'd like to do is click whenever, and in this example we're going to use whenever, and we're going to do an F key press on a keypad, and I'm going to select any keypad and select F key number 4. Now we have a comments area here, so we can type in comments to help you better understand what the rule is doing. And this one, I'm going to use a counter. Now, let me back up for 1 second.
Hey Brad, excuse me 1 minute.
Yes.
We did have someone request that you use your cursor to show what you're referring to.
Okay, sure.
And then one other quick question. Which device did you say is needed for the email option?
That would be the ELK M1X EP, our Ethernet expander.
Thanks.
Okay, sure. All right. We're going to be using a counter. We have lots of requests for counters. Under counters, you can have 64 individual counters. Like I said, a counter it can be added to, subtracted from. You can set it to a specific value, anywhere from 0 to 65,535. And in a lot of cases, we use these counters as a flag or a placeholder or something of that nature. And what I'm going to do today is I've already predefined counter 1, and I had to abbreviate because we're limited on characters we can type in here, but this stands for toggle front light. And we're going to create a rule now. So I'm going to go rules, new, whenever. And this is our trigger event. I want this rule to trigger whenever the F4 key is pressed on any keypad. And I'll tell it OK. And then I'm going to have a then statement, and I'm going to control or set counter. This is my toggle front light counter 1. I'm going to toggle it between 0 and 1. And I'll show you why in a second. We're going to click OK. At this moment, this rule is complete, so I want to click Done. And I apologize for that. I don't know why my screen is disappearing on me. So our first rule is done. Whenever the F4 key on any keypad is activated, then toggle counter 1 between 0 and 1. So my next rule is whenever, and I want to go to counters, change or expire. This is my counter I'm dealing with. Whenever it equals a fixed value of 0, because we're toggling it between 0 and 1, I want to turn on a light. And so I will control individual light, and we'll do the front porch light. We're going to, since it's equal to 0, we're going to turn that light off. And this rule is done. Now we need a third rule to complete this event. Once again, whenever the counter changes, this time when the counter is equal to a fixed value of 1, once again I'm going to control an individual light. I want to turn it on. It's already set, so I'm going to click OK, and my rule is done. So what we've done here is 3 rules. Whenever the F key is pressed, it toggles the counter between 0 and 1. So every time you press that F key, it'll either set it to 0 or it'll change it back to 1 and then to 0. So each time I do that, I'm essentially turning on or off the light based upon the state of the counter. So whenever the counter is equal to 0, I'm going to turn my light off. Whenever the counter is equal to 1, I'm going to turn my light on. I have a few more examples of counters we'll talk about a little later on, but right now, if we don't have any questions about this rule, we've had numerous requests on how to control sprinklers. And this type of rule can be very basic, or you can condition it to be more specific so that you're only using the sprinkler system during specific times. And typically when you're going to integrate a sprinkler system with the M1, you'll be using physical relays, say for instance off of our M1X OVR, which is 8 relays and 8 low voltage outputs, to control the voltage to the solenoid of the sprinkler system. Now in my next example here.
Hey Brad.
Yes.
Let me ask you a couple quick questions back on the lighting.
Sure.
Can you have a message at the keypad at the same time?
Sure. Yeah,
And
we could create a custom text message. Let's go ahead and seem to be having technical difficulty. There we go, new. And we're going to create a new text message that may say front light on. And I could do another one with front light off. And this text message is complete, so I'd click OK. I'd go back to my rules, and I could edit this rule, which is turn the light on. Click Edit. And then I'm going to add another then statement, and I'm going to send text to keypad. I'm going to display the following message, front light on, in area 1. If I wanted to be to keypads, I could. But in this case, I'm just going to send that text message, and once again, we'll click Done. So whenever the light turns on, not only does the light turn on, but now we get a custom text message on the keypads saying front light on.
Okay, the other question on that was, can a rule be written to flash or blink a light for a set time?
Yes, and I've got some examples that we'll come to a little bit later on how to do that. My example is how to do an output, but we can do a light as well in this scenario. So
Okay,
we'll,
okay. Can a multiple event occur simultaneously, or is there a priority?
Not quite understanding what they're asking.
A multiple event. So like if you've got something set at the same time, how does it set priority?
Well, what happens, the RP, well, the M1 will scroll down through these rules very, very fast, and it's looking for an event to take place. If it's scrolling down and the event is true, the whenever statement is true, it's going to activate that and then go back to polling the rules. If within that rule it has another event which could call another rule or maybe a task, it's going to execute that as well. So if something happens at one time that would cause multiple things to happen, it'll handle it. It's not a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, next we're going to do a little sprinkler control. And first I want to do is go under Automation, and I want to go under Outputs. And the M1 has the ability to have up to 208 outputs. Now, output 1 and 2 on the board are your speakers, your interior and exterior speakers, and shouldn't be used in rules. And I've had several cases where someone will call me saying, my siren's going off, the system's not in alarm, one thing or another, and come to find out they inadvertently turned output 1 on. And which is not really pleasant at 3 in the morning when they wanted to simply control a thermostat, and they accidentally turned output 1 on, and now the whole house is awake. But under outputs, we can name the first 64 outputs. You can assign them a name and click the show box that they show on the keypad or the graphical user interfaces. After output 64, 65 through 208, it's simply output number after that. What I want to do here, what I've done is on my output expander, my M1X OVR, for output 17, I've called it Zone 1 sprinkler, then Zone 2 sprinkler, and so forth. And I'm going to create some rules to control the sprinklers. The first thing I want is a whenever statement. And this time I'm going to base it upon time occurrence. And I want it to equal a specific time of day, so I'm going to select 5 a.m. Tell it OK. Now I want to condition this with the fact I want specific days of the week. So I'm going to date, and I'm going to specific days of the week. And for my application, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are the days that I want to water the lawn or control the sprinklers. I'll tell it OK. Now, given the need for water conservation and everything, I've got a rain sensor set up so that it gives me a dry contact closure when there's sufficient moisture in the ground. So once again, I'm going to condition this with and. I have that sensor hooked up to a zone on my system, and in this case it's going to be zone 17. So I'm going to scroll down to zone 17, my rain sensor, and if it is secure, then I want to water the lawn. But if it's not secure, meaning the contact's closed, there's sufficient moisture and this rule should not fire. So now I'll click then, and since I have the solenoids controlled by my outputs, I want to turn on specific outputs. There's zone 1. I'm going to turn it on. I want to turn it on for a duration. Remember we said we can have whenever and then. Here's the 4 that I was talking about earlier. Duration, and in this case 20 minutes will probably be sufficient, or I can just type 20 and click OK. Now I have 4 zones, so I would like to control all 4 of them. And this is turning it on once again for 20 minutes. And I will just go through the next 2 real quick. Yep, there's 19. Turning it on. Okay, apologize. Okay, that's good for now. So we'll click done.
Okay, we've got a quick question, Brian.
Sure.
When you use the zones in this way, do you assume that you don't put them in the panel as a zone type? So does this mean that you don't need an EOL resistor?
No, you don't have to. And what I've done for zone 17, we'll click on zone inputs. It's my range sensor. It's a non-alarm zone, meaning it won't cause any alarm conditions. I can use it simply in rules. and I've set it up as normally open. So in a secure state, the zone is normally open, but when moisture is detected, it closes a set of contacts. And if that set of contacts is closed, it's going to prevent my rule from firing. But the M1 does have the ability to use end-of-line resistor, normally open, or normally closed sensors. It's completely customizable.
Hey Brad, how do you cycle through the sprinkler zones? You know, if you want each zone for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, how do you cycle through the zone?
Okay, that's my next example. So right now in this example, at 5 a.m. and the days are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and my rain sensor is secure. It's dry, much like it is here now. Then I'm going to turn zones 1, 2, and 3 on for 20 minutes each. Now those 3 zones are going to turn on immediately then. In this scenario, if you want to sequence those, then what I would do would, let me create a new rule. You wouldn't be using this one, but you would be using one similar. And once again, time occurrence, and 5 a.m. And once again, we're going to condition it with Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And my zone 17 is secure. Yep, secure. Okay. Then, sorry, I'm going to turn the first one on for a duration of 10 minutes. At this moment, this rule is complete. So we'll click Done. My next rule is based upon zone 17 turning off. So whenever output change, in this case, I want to make sure select turned off 17. Now I want to turn on zone or output 18, which will control zone 2 of the sprinkler system. And in this scenario, what's happening is maybe the first rule, maybe you don't have sufficient water pressure to handle all 3 zones being on at the same time. So we're going to let one run, and then when it turns off, we're going to turn the next zone on. And when that zone turns off, and this is, make sure it's turned off, output 18 turns off. Now I want to turn number 19 on. Now this whole process is going to take an hour. It's going to, I said 10 minutes, 30 minutes. Turn it on for a duration of 10 minutes. Done. So our first rule, number 5 here, whenever the time is 5 a.m. and our days are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and my rain sensor is secure, turn the first sprinkler on for 10 minutes. When that sprinkler turns off, rule number 6, then I'm going to turn the next sprinkler on for 10 minutes. And then once it finishes, I'll turn the third sprinkler on for 10 minutes. So that's kind of how you sequence. You could do other things with counters to do this for the same results, but this is a real simple way to sequence through based upon one output turning off so we can turn another output on.
Hey Brad, do you have the ability to set it for like odd or even days?
Sure. Rule, whenever. Once again, time occurrence. And let's see. Time occurrence, we'll say midnight. And date is, even days. Or, cancel that, and date is maybe every other month or so. All depends. But yes, that is available in the M1 rule engine. Now then, this would be a good time to talk about something you may have noticed is custom settings. Now, custom setting, you can set these variables to a custom setting. And through the keypad programming, you can adjust a custom setting. Now, this may be a benefit that once you've set these rules up and you're finished, the ElkRP software is disconnected, later on you may decide that 5 a.m. isn't a good time for you. So in our rule here, we'll edit this rule. I'm going to edit the first line. Instead of 5 a.m., I'm going to make this a custom setting. Sprinkler time on, custom setting number 1. I'm going to click OK. And I want to edit these then statements so that I'm using a custom setting for the sprinkler runtime. This is number 2. And I could set both of those up for the same thing. And let me show you. Under Automation and Custom Settings, I set sprinkler on time. It's a time of day. It's 5 a.m. The sprinkler run time was 20 minutes. I'm finished and I walk away from the control, but later on somebody may decide that these are not good values for them. They like 6 a.m. in 10 minutes. Through the keypad, you can adjust those settings without having the RP software connected. So any questions about sprinkler control?
Is the value always in minutes, or can you do seconds and hours?
No, you can do seconds and hours. Yep.
And then there was another question. Show me what comments do. Can they be used to comment the rules code for easier reading?
Sure. Okay, we'll edit this first rule. And we'll edit this then statement. Sorry, click Edit. And instead of 20 minutes, we might have 1 hour, 20 minutes, 30 seconds. Click OK. So that was how we could add hours, minutes, and seconds to the on time that this output is going to remain on. And in the comments, you could do something like maybe today's date and rule 2. And then once you click Done, now then we have a comment right above the rule. So as we're looking down through our rules, okay, on 7/29 I made this change. I added a rule to control my sprinklers at 5 a.m.
Hey Brad, we had another question. It says, if I use one of the outputs with a relay, must I use a sensitive relay like the 924, or can I use the 912?
Okay, with the low voltage outputs off of the control, you have outputs 7 through 16. Those are rated at 12 volt DC at 50 milliamps each. So in this case, if you're using the M1 Gold, you could use either the 912, 912B, or 924, or the M1RB relay board. And those low voltage outputs to control the physical relays. If you happen to have the M1 EZ8 control, those outputs are 12 volt DC, 10 milliamps each, in which case you could only use the 924 relay or the M1RB.
And one more question, Brad. The question is, do we integrate with WeatherBug or other online climate control?
Not directly. I'm not sure what kind of integration we would be looking at there, but no, not at this time. All right, going to the next example, we had a request for being able to cross-zone. And the M1 has cross-zone capabilities for security aspects, but in rule writing you may want to do something a little different based upon two zones being activated. Now in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to maybe assume we have some outdoor photo beams or driveway sensors, and we're going to use one of our phantom outputs or an unused output in this example. So first thing, I've already defined some zones as photo beams, so I'm going to do a zone input change, and in this case it's going to be zone 18. So I'll scroll down. This is my outdoor beam, which the outer beam, whenever it becomes not secure, okay, I'm going to turn on a phantom output. And what I'm going to do with this output is I'm going to, if a second zone trips while this output is on, then I assume somebody is walking through and it's not just a bird or an animal wandering around in this area. So we're going to turn an output, and I've selected output 21 for this example, checking status. I'm going to turn it on for a duration of 20 seconds. Or I could just type 20. Tell it OK. Now this rule is done. Now I have another outdoor beam, so whenever, and this is zone 19, whenever zone 19 becomes not secure, okay, not secure, I'm going to condition it with and output (21) is on. Then I want to do something, and perhaps maybe it's speak a voice message through the M1, and we can select from a number of predefined voice messages, or I could assign a unique voice message to a zone while using one of the 6-word phrases, and I could have it speak zone 18, which may say violated a protected area or something. But if zone 19 is tripped and this output is not on, then this rule is not going to fire. So we'd have to see zone 18 violated first, and then within 20 seconds, zone 19 violated. Now let's say, for instance, you wanted to condition these rules based upon it being dark outside. So I can edit my existing rule, add a conditioning and statement, light or dark. I want to make sure that it is dark outside based upon the sunrise sunset settings, so that this rule only activates during the nighttime. So this one particular rule has two conditioning and statements. That output has to be on and it has to be dark outside before that message is spoken.
Hey Brad, how do you record a custom message?
Okay, that's a good question. All right, the easiest thing to do is take a look at page 19 of the installation manual. There's step-by-step instructions there. Basically what you'll be doing is you'll use a house phone as a microphone. The M1 has 10 6-second locations that you can record your own custom message into. Now if you need more custom messages, we offer 2 recordable voice enunciators, the ElkRP 120 and ElkRP 124. that you can record your own custom message into or download a WAV file into and use one of the voltage triggers or one of the relay outputs off the M1 to activate that message to play. Now the above rule was when one zone trips and then another zone trips. In this next example, we're going to base it upon two zones being violated at the same time. We'll use our same outdoor beams here, and this time we'll do a whenever, and once again zone change. I'm going to select zone 18 when it's not secure, and zone 19 is not secure. Okay. Then I want to control lighting. So I'll turn on an individual light, which in this case may be the front porch light. Is that okay? And that rule is done. Now if you want the opposite to happen also, you would create a second rule based upon zone 19 changing state and zone 18 being not secure to control the light. In this way, both have to be not secure at the same time. Okay, I had a request. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we had a question. It refers back to rules 8 and 9 as to why you needed to repeat "it is dark outside" in 9 when you already had it in 8.
You don't have to. You didn't have to. I was just using the "and" as an example, but I could lift it out.
Okay, and slightly back just a little bit. Which outputs are used with relay 912?
Okay, the 912 it's a 12 volt DC operation. It needs 30 milliamps of current to turn on. So off of the main board on the J16 connector, and we provide a wiring harness that plugs onto that with flying leads, you can connect one of those low voltage outputs, 9 through 16, to the 912 relay and turn it on or off. And with the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've got another question. You want to go ahead before I ask you?
Well, I was going to say, if you use the output expander, the M1X OVR, it has 8 relays and 8 low voltage outputs on that board. It's a total of 16 outputs. So you can use the 8 relays and the 8 low voltage, and the 8 low voltage can control a 912 or 924. Or you can add the M1RB and then have a total of 16 physical Form C relays.
Okay, here's the question. Instead of using a particular zone number, can you use a zone type in a rule? As in, whenever any motion detector trips, can we trip an output momentarily?
No, I'm afraid we don't have that capability. It has to be a specific zone. Yeah, it has to be a specific zone or the arm-disarm status of the entire system. You can have the rule based upon whenever security/alarms burglar status becomes not ready. But that's for all zones. It would be a global when it becomes not ready.
Okay, and then one more question. Can you elaborate on the not secure open loop in Rule 10 versus the not secure in Rule 9?
It's basically the same thing. It's not secure is when the zone is in an alarm state, or not an alarm state, but when it's a violated state. And in this case, not secure is open loop, not seeing the resistor. Just kind of the way our RP engineer worded it there. It's still basically the same thing, open loop, not secure. Right, the next example here, we've got had a request for how to use a wireless PIR to control an output. And what we'd like to do in this example is we'll have whenever, and our input change, I've set up zone 33 as a wireless motion detector. So I'll scroll down to 33, and this happens to be in the garage. So whenever my garage PIR becomes violated, then I'm going to turn on an output. And in this case, I want to use output 22 because I have it hardwired to a fan. So I'm going to turn it on. And I'm going to turn it on for a duration of 10 minutes, but I want to restart timer if running. And the reason I want to do this is each time I walk in front of that motion detector, I want to restart that timer so that fan will run continually until it doesn't see motion for 10 minutes. So each time I walk in front of that motion detector, I'm going to restart that output's timer at 10 minutes. So whenever I walk out of the room, 10 minutes later, that fan should turn off. This is a good example maybe for a bathroom fan, an exhaust fan or something that you want to run once you've left the facility and the steam, we need to get the steam out of the room. We let that fan run for an additional 10, 15, 20 minutes. All right, earlier we had somebody ask about toggling an output, I believe, or causing it to flash. So what we'd like to do now is write a rule that we're going to give a visual indication. We're going to flash a relay or have it turn on based upon a condition. And our condition this time is whenever, and I want to have this activate whenever my home becomes disarmed. Then I want to turn output 24 on. And 24 can be an LED or some other visual indication to let you know that the system, actually I'm sorry, I want to turn that off. So I'm going to edit that. I want to turn it off. Visual indication that the system has disarmed. And the same is true when the system becomes armed. And it can be any mode of armed or a specific mode of armed. I'm going to do any mode. Once again, output 24, armed state. I want to turn it on. Now if you have a bicolor LED, you can use one output, and when the output turns on, the LED could turn red. When the output turns off, the LED could turn green. Now toggling, if there's an event that we need to toggle something, the shortest duration timer value in the RP rule engine is 1 second. So if I want to toggle something, let's say for instance I want to toggle that a different output whenever a door is open. So I'm going to, this time, set up a time occurrence. And I want to check this rule every 2 seconds. So whenever every 2 seconds and zone 1 front door not secure, then I'm going to turn my output on, and this time we'll select output 25. I'm going to turn it on for a duration of 1 second. Now in this rule, whenever every 2 seconds and that zone is not secure, I'm going to turn output 25 on for 1 second. Essentially, I've created 1 second on, 1 second off. That LED is going to continue to flash at that rate for that amount of time while the door is open. The same is true if you wanted to toggle the output when the system is armed. You could do the same thing whenever 2 seconds and the Smith home is armed to the away mode. Turn that output on for 1 second. A good way to toggle a light, same scenario. We'll have whenever 2 seconds I apologize for that. And security. Let's say the alarm any alarm is active, then control the light, and let's say it's that front porch light. We're going to turn it on for a duration. Depending on the lighting control, we may have to adjust this because 1 second may not be fast enough for the lights to respond. So we may have to do every 4 seconds. Turn the light on for 2 seconds to allow the commands for the light to respond to the commands being sent to it. So edit, and I want to edit. So every 4 seconds and the alarm is active, the sirens are sounding, I'm going to turn that light on for 2 seconds. So now I've created 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off for the toggle rate. Being that we are talking about lighting now, I think now would be a good time to mention that the Elk M1 does integrate with a number of lighting technologies and manufacturers. And if you get the opportunity to visit our website on our partners page, you can see the different manufacturers as well as links to their websites and integration notes which may be helpful when setting up your system. In most cases, when you integrate lighting into the M1 system, you'll need the Elk M1X SP, our serial port expander. And I would highly encourage to download a copy of that so that you have it so that you can see. I'm going to, right now you can see this is the table of contents, and our lighting control manufacturers include OnQ ALC, UPB, Centralite, Lutron, Insteon, Leventon, and X10. With X10 you do not need the XSP, but with these other manufacturers you would need an XSP module.
Hey Brad, quick question.
Sure.
How can a custom message be done without a home phone? A lot of people are now just with cell phones.
Well, we'll have to somehow connect a regular hardwired plain Jane phone up to R1 and T1 on the board, and then go through the regular steps on page 19 to get the message into the M1. telephone acts as a microphone. There's no microphone input directly on the M1.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, we're going to create some lighting rules. And once again, these can be very, very simple rules up to more complex rules depending on your situation. And typically, depending on the manufacturer of the lighting control, the M1 can control up to 192 individual loads and 64 scenes or links. We have the capability of doing 256 devices, which may be broken into 192 individual loads and 64 scenes. So with my next example, I want to turn a light on when it becomes dark outside. So real simple, whenever, in the time occurrence, at sunset, or I could do a few minutes before sunset or a few minutes after sunset. Whenever sunset, and that's based upon your sunrise, sunset settings. And let's say I want to be a little bit more specific. I want to base it upon days of the week being Saturday and Sunday. Okay. Then control lighting, individual, and I can select front porch light, and I can turn it on for perhaps maybe 2 hours. I can select my next light, which may be my front hall. I think maybe we'll turn it on for 3 hours. And lastly, let's turn on living room. And that one we may only want on for 45 minutes. So we've controlled 3 individual lights turning on when the system detects that it's at sunset. Now these 3 lights could have been linked to a scene depending on the lighting control manufacturer. And in which case, instead of having to do 3 individual then statements, I could edit this to simply turn on the link, which starts at 193. And I could eliminate those 3 then statements. But for now, I'm going to leave it as it is. All right, another example on an automated light function.
Hey, Brad.
Yes.
Just go back a little bit on the custom messaging. You know, we're talking about about the problem of having a home phone versus a cell phone. Can you download it from the computer like a WAV file?
Not at this time, no. Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. All right, let's say, for instance, we have a master bedroom, and there's a light in it, and somebody is continually leaving that light on all the time. We want to automate that so that light turns off automatically. So we could have a sensor on the bedroom, master bedroom closet door. It would be a non-alarm zone. We can use it in rules, and we'll say, for instance, whenever, let's see, yep, master bedroom closet becomes not secure, then control lighting, individual, and we'll turn the master bedroom closet light on for a duration of, we'll say, 5 minutes. And 5 minutes later, regardless of the state of that door, that light's going to turn off automatically. Now, for some of us, especially us guys, we know that we don't even need the light. Just run your hand down, pick out what you need, go. But for some others, you ladies, 5 minutes may not be enough. But you can edit that rule hour, hour and a half, whatever's appropriate. Earlier we used our outdoor beams or our driveway sensors. We can do the same thing to control lights, and we can be specific on when we want the lights to turn on. Now say for instance we have our outdoor driveway sensor, and we have it connected to zone 20 in this case. And whenever it becomes not secure, let's say we only want that light to turn on whenever the time is later than 6 p.m., okay, and time is earlier than 11 p.m. And we want to turn on our front porch light. So whenever we drive into the driveway, or somebody drives into the driveway, and it's after 6 but before 11, then turn on the front porch light for them.
Hey Brad, a question.
Mm-hmm.
How would you write a... Hold on one second. How would you write a rule to send a text message if the garage door remains open after a set amount of time after the alarm is in exit?
Oh, after the if the garage door is left open after the system is armed to the away mode?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see what counters I have. This would be a good example for a counter. So we'll say garage door. Garage door open. Okay. And we'll write our rule. Let's see. Okay. Whenever, and the garage door, okay, becomes not secure, then we will set my counter, garage door counter, 3. I'm going to set it to a value of 60. Okay. Now it's done. Now then I have a second rule, new, whenever, time occurrence, every second, and my system is armed to the away mode, okay, and the garage door is not secure, then I want to subtract 1 from that counter, garage door counter. So whenever every 1 second, and the system's armed to the away mode, and the garage door is left open, subtract 1 from the counter. Okay, and that's done. Now then, whenever that counter equals 0, meaning it's been open continually now for 1 minute and the system's armed to the away mode, then I could send an email message which could be configured as a text message to a phone. Or I could have it call and deliver a predefined message. So when the door becomes not secure, we're setting the counter to 60. If they close the door and open it back, it resets the counter to 60. So this rule here, the number 20 rule, only fires if the system is armed to the away mode and that garage door is not secure. Then it'll subtract 1 from the counter. And for 60 times it'll go through here, and then whenever that counter ever changes to 0 or equals 0, then it'll send them the text message or the email.
Brad, this is a question kind of going back to lighting, but it relates to other things.
Mm-hmm.
Would it create a conflict if a homeowner turns off a light controlled by UPV and activated by a rule in the M1 before the counter times out?
Yes, that would play. Once the rule activates, it's sitting there running, and if, let's say, for instance, the M1 said turn the light on for 1 hour, but then the homeowner came through and turned it off, the M1's not going to return the light back on. Now there are cases where, and with lighting especially, that something like that could happen. All right, still working on lighting. I think the next rule you'll find interesting. It's similar to the automated master closet light, but this time we're going to do the living room light so that it's never left on. And there's a little twist to it I want to explain. So we're going to do a whenever. Once again, we're going to base this upon a motion detector, changing state. And I think the living room is on 13, living room motion, not secure. Okay, and it's dark outside. Let's make sure it's dark before we turn that light on. Okay. Then I want to turn on the living room light. Okay. But I want to make sure it turns off when there's no motion being detected. Now, we'll notice right now, if I go back and edit this, I can turn the light on for a duration. I could do that, but there's no restart timer value here. So once this rule fires, if I say turn on for 5 minutes, 5 minutes later, it's going to turn back off. And the motion would have to be tripped again after the rule fires before it's going to turn the light back on. So we're going to go around this by, we're not going to check 4. We're going to tell it okay. We're going to turn on one of our phantom outputs. And this one was output. Now we'll do 23. Yep, living room light status, output 23. We'll turn it on for 5 minutes, but we'll restart the timer. So whenever the motion is detected and it's dark, we're going to turn that living room light on, so it's on solid. We're going to turn on a phantom output for 5 minutes. Now, each time that the motion is tripped, it's going to execute these four, the AND statement and the two then statements again. The light's already on. We've simply sent it another on command. But now, once motion has ceased for those 5 minutes, we want to turn that light off. And once again, we'll base that upon the phantom output turning off. And that was output 23, whenever it turns off. Okay. Then we'll turn our living room light off. So that way the living room light is never left on once everyone's out of the room. And that's just a few examples of automating lighting control. The M1 does integrate with thermostats as well, and once again, there's several manufacturers, different models and makes and so forth, and I would once again encourage you to get the XSP installation manual. Our M1 XSP, we call it a 3-product in one. It can only be one product at a time. It can either be a lighting control interface, a thermostat control interface, or a generic serial port expander, but it can only be one function at a time. So if you're doing lighting control and thermostat control, you'll need two M1 XSPs. And we can see from our table of contents, we integrate with the Aprilaire, the RCS, HAI, and Carrier Infinity thermostats. The system will support up to 16 thermostats, and depending on the make and model, you may only need one XSP, or you may need additional depending on the manufacturer of the thermostat. Getting back to our rules, very similar to lighting control. It's if you have a whenever statement, and let's say maybe a time occurrence, maybe perhaps whenever the time of day equals 6 p.m. in the evening, we want to then control thermostat. So we click our thermostat, and the hall thermostat, perhaps maybe we'll set it to cool. Then we'd want to set its set point. So we do cooling set point. 70 degrees is good. So now at 6 p.m. we adjust the thermostat to the cool mode and a desired cooling set point of 70 degrees. You can use task. You can assign a task to perhaps maybe cool mode and then have that task activate at different times. You can have that task activate through the phone interface or through the graphical user interfaces. Using our graphical user interface, our RMS software, or our virtual keypad software built into the XEP module, you can directly control the thermostat's modes, operation, set points, and view their current temperature readings. Anyone have a specific example they'd like to see as far as, I think with some of the other whenevers we've gone over, you can see that pretty much any event you can cause a thermostat to be controlled. Now I will say that if you have multiple thermostats, the M1, once the rules activate, they broadcast these changes out over the thermostat's data bus. Some thermostats communicate faster than others. If you have multiple thermostats, you may have to break these rules into smaller increments using the phantom outputs so that we send 3 or 4 commands or control 2 or 3 thermostats at one time and then another set maybe a couple seconds later, just so that we know that the commands are being received by the thermostats. One thing I didn't mention, it is possible to write a rule that you think looks perfectly correct but won't work. And on our website under the M1 application notes, we have a little section there dedicated to rules that do not work and why. So if you get a chance to take a look at that, it might explain some of these scenarios that could come up that would prevent a rule from activating.
Okay, Brad, we got a question. How would you set up an X10 command output?
Okay, all right. Under lighting, under automation and lighting, this is where we name our lighting devices. And depending on the manufacturer of the technology, in some cases, let's say for instance UPB or ISY, you set their networks up separately, configure them, assign names, learn in devices. Through lighting control, you can right-click on lighting and import lighting data, and you can take their files, either the ISY99 or the Upstart from UPB, and you can import that data back into the RP software and then send it down to the control. Really nice and simple. X10 is similar. X10 devices have 2 dials on them, and one's the house code, one's the unit code. Now what we have here under lighting and device, device number 1 in parentheses is A1. That's X10 house code A, unit code 1. And then house code A, unit code 2, all the way down to number 256, or P16. So once you set the dials, we'll call this one, bedroom number 2. In most cases, X10 will be simply standard format. And then you have the option for on-off switch, dimmer, or appliance module. The option bit should not be checked. That's only used for ISY99 devices, Insteon devices. The show box allows it to show on the keypad or graphical user interfaces. Then we have the voice description. You can assign a voice description to any light and use that through the automation telephone interface, or if you wanted to speak when that light turned on, you could have it speak light number 6, A6. All right. The M1 has the capability of integrating with whole house audio, Rust Sound, Proficient, and Nuvo whole house audio. And we recently added the ability to write rules to send commands to these devices using the generic audio setup within the XEP module. And you'll find that under the XEP setup and audio system. And what I've done is I've given the audio names, the zone names, and then selected some sources to interface their equipment to the local area network. In most cases, you will need an ElkRP which is a serial to Ethernet bridge, so that the serial port on the Rust Sound or Nuvo or Proficient can be connected to the local area network. And once again, writing rules is based upon the whatever event you want. Let's say, for instance, whenever the system disarms, is disarmed, okay. Then we're going to control audio, and we can say I want to set the living room. I'm going to turn it on, and other options there, volume and so forth. Turn it on, and then we'll click play. And that'll send the generic audio command through the XEP onto the local area network to the Rust Sound or Proficient or Nuvo. You could have it set up so that if those outdoor beams get tripped and it's dark outside and your system's armed to the away mode, not only would you turn on the light, you could turn on the whole house audio system to give the appearance that somebody is home. Any questions about thermostats, lighting, or the audio? Okay. All right, a couple other items we want to go over real quick. These are I'm going to show you these in a Word document that I have. They're kind of in-depth rules, and one's how to generate a random look. Bear with me one second while I find that.
Brad, are you showing the screen from your computer?
No, it should be blank at the moment. Be right back.
Okay, good. While we're waiting on Brad, I just want to let everyone know we have received lots of questions, which we definitely appreciate, but obviously we are not able to answer all of them. So we will do our best to follow up with emails following the webinar, but feel free always to call our tech support for further assistance. We did have a question about online resources for applications and rules, and you can go to our website at elkproducts.com. Under the support tab, there is, if you go into professional installers, there is a whole section of M1 applications and rules, so a lot of the common rules are already there for you as examples.
Okay, I apologize. Hold on one second. All right. In the example we're looking at on the screen right now, the M1 has the capability to have 8 telephone numbers programmed into it. Let's say, for instance, you have your central station and a backup as telephone 1 and 2, and then 4 through 6 as cell phone numbers, family, friends, neighbors. And let's say, for instance, you have an event take place and you want the system to call out. Now, we can create a rule that says whenever my home, the Smith's home, goes into alarm, then dial John Smith, then dial Jane, Tommy, Sally, and deliver this voice message. And in this rule, all 4 would get called at the same time. Well, in order. John, Jane, Tommy, and then Sally. And they will do the message. If whoever acknowledges the call, and that's it, you don't want the rule to go any further, you can take a look at the examples that we have here to help eliminate that from happening. Now, depending on the scenario, depending on the event that takes place, if this is something that needs somebody's immediate attention, I would highly encourage you to let the central monitoring service call the people on the call list after they've alerted the police, fire, medical, or so forth, so that you have confirmation that the call has been received. Otherwise, it may go to voicemail or something like that, and the intended party never got the message. But if it's something that's not as critical and doesn't need immediate attention, but you don't want to have it continue call, then you can set up rules that, and this was provided by Amy. I greatly appreciate that. And what she has done is she wrote a rule where she had a telephone, and then to that telephone a backup, and then a primary, and a backup, and a primary. And based upon her rules, whenever the central station kiss-off occurs, central station has acknowledged a transmission, then she set a counter to 1. Now we have a burglar alarm that takes place. Central station's been called. When the burglar alarm takes place, she has her rule set that counter to 0. And then it starts the dialing process and turns on a phantom output, which is, in this case, output 3. Whenever output 3 turns off and the phone line is seized, meaning the M1 still has the phone off hook, it turns that output back on. And so it's going to check that output again in 1 minute to see if it's off, and if the phone line is not seized in this case, and the central station acknowledgement has been received, or I'm sorry, has not been received, then it's going to dial a different number, and it's going to repeat this process for several minutes until we get through everyone on the call list. It's just kind of a way that if one person receives the call and they acknowledge it, it prevents the rest of the rules from firing. But when using a scenario like this, please be cautious that depending on the event, now if it's a high temperature on a thermostat, that's not as critical as a water leak or something, where you might have tons of water in a basement or something. The next screen here is something that we've had requests for as far as random lighting control. And while the M1 doesn't have a random generator, you can use a counter and increment that counter and check the status of that counter to specific times to give a random feel. Now in this example here, whenever every 10 seconds and the Smith home is armed to away mode, we're adding 100 to a random look counter. And then when they disarm the system, we're just adding a random value. I just threw 2095 in there, but you could add anything. You could also have that random counter incremented based upon other events, like every time the front door is opened, just add a value to that counter, so it's never the same value at any given time. And whenever every 17 minutes and the Smith home is armed to the vacation mode, in this case the days of the week are Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it's later than 5 and earlier than midnight, and I check my counter, if it's less than 12,999, then I'm going to turn a light on for 8 minutes. Well, 17 minutes later, it's going to check again, and depending on the counter value, it could be turning on different lights all evening. So this is kind of a random look using counters and the time values and things like that. Now, you don't have to go this in depth to give a random look. You can always do something based upon the day of the week and the time and a specific level of armed and give the appearance of random lighting.
Hey Brad, a question. How many
Sure.
attempts are made to call the central station, and is that value programmable?
Yes, central station, you can have the dial attempts from 1 to 15.
Okay, and then another question was, is it possible for us to email out the rules that you're using today so they can review them?
Absolutely, good question. Sure, we can email the rules, and if anyone else would like to know how to email rules, you can email your whole account to somebody by clicking File and Export Account, and you can save this to your desktop. You can call it something. We can call it RP Rules 729, and then I can save it to my desktop, and I can attach that file to an email. If you want to do just the rules, if you hold down Shift, highlight all the rules, right-click, you can export just this section. And this is just the rules for today. And 7-29-11. And I can export just the rules only. Another nice feature would be if you wanted to print just the rules. If you click the print icon on the toolbar, we can select this account and preview. Yes, it's been modified, okay. And now I can select the things that I want to print. And if it's just the rules, let's clear all. I'll select just rules, okay. And you can see the rules that we have created today. And I can save them, or I can go ahead and print them. Real quickly, we've gone through a number of rules. We've created about 24 rules, and we've only used 10% of the rule engine. And we've used a lot of extra thens and ands and fors. So we've done a lot of automation in 24 rules and only used 10% of the rule engine. And at this time, if there's no other questions, I've finished with my presentation for the day. Greatly appreciate everyone's attention. I hope everyone got something out of it. If you have questions, please feel free to give us an email, techsupport@elkproducts.com. And if no other questions, Beth, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, that is it. We've answered most of the questions. Like I said, there's a few others that we will try to respond to via email. But if you have other questions after visiting this webinar, as Brad said, please email us at techsupport@elkproducts.com. We thank you for joining us and have a great weekend.